how would I unpack for you?
Let's get going. This is going to stop like 10 minutes.
Okay. It's just what the people want.
Yeah, well, we're both dealing with house guests.
We generally don't travel together, like the actual getting from point A to point B strategically.
Yeah.
The Wall Street Journal wrote about this. They called it like travel divorce. Welcome to People vs. Algorithms, a show about detecting patterns in media, technology, and culture. Doing this live from Hvar, Croatia.
It's been a tough couple of weeks. Let's be honest.
It has been.
Yeah.
You know, it turns out there's a reason that Jeff Bezos does not have a podcast. I think he just doesn't have too much wonky Wi-Fi in his Mediterranean travels. But cry me a river. It's just me and you today, Troy, because...
Well, we were late. We were late last week. We're late this week. You've
it's all my
been
fault.
deeply apologetic, and we're here for you.
Well, I have been, and I mean it. I had a great time in Italy. I want to get into the show, but I just want to say, I think the Italian people are one of my favorite people. They're quirky.
They're great.
They're like different. They've got different priorities. And I don't think I've had like many, if any, negative experiences with Italian
I think
people.
they're incredibly tolerant.
Shout out Italians.
They're incredibly tolerant of Americans. You know what I mean? Like the French secretly, the French have a hard time hiding their...
Secretly. I don't think it's secret.
No, they don't like you. They don't even like Canadians in France, I don't think. But the Italians are like, have a good time. Let's have a good time. They're great.
Yeah. They'd love the Dolce. Even the guy at Noleggio Playa who rips me off every summer. I like him. He shakes my hand and then he rips me off. And then when he's done with me protesting being ripped off, he says, bye-bye. And then we just go our own ways. And then we repeat it the next summer. It's fun. Linda is really going off in field notes, and she's a little bit of a bullshitter. I think this is like an AI character flaw.
Deeply, yeah. I'm trying to correct her, and I'm being kind about it. But you know, when I ask Linda to go out and get context in an article or summarize an article or whatever, and she comes back and says she did it, and she just gives me a summary based on some superficial metadata and doesn't dig in. It's frustrating, and I've taken her aside and talked to her about it, and it should be getting better.
It did get uncomfortable. You guys were going back and forth. You're a little stern with her, but I find
Who is Linda? Who is Linda, Brian?
Linda, I figure everyone knows Linda. Linda is an AI who is in PVA Field Notes. That's at pvanotes.com. She's just kind of a know-it-all. She's like the resident know-it-all. Because I don't provide context, and then you ask Linda to provide the context of whatever is being blathered about. Correct?
Yeah, I mean, Linda is sort of just the facts man. At least that's how I've asked her to be. I think she's doing a pretty good job. She helps people with onboarding. She summarizes podcasts for us. She goes out to X and Reddit and other places and brings back tidbits for us to process. So all in all, Linda is, I think, quite useful, but she gets over her skis sometimes for sure.
Yeah. So I think Field Notes it's a successful experiment. We
got some feedback. Do you want me to read that user feedback? I thought that was pretty.
Yeah,
nice.
It sounded like it came from you, but go on. Do read it.
You think I manufactured that? No, I was so sick of hearing Troy bloviate on and on and on about his vibe coding adventure, but you finally broke me down, and I gotta say, Field Notes is pretty good. I just keep it open as a tab and periodically check it throughout the day. It's a great way to cut through the noise without having to dive into my currently 620 deep folder of unread newsletters. Problem, we're overwhelmed with newsletters, or crawl back onto social media, which I've sworn off of for my sanity. Kudos, guys. Nice feedback. Thank you.
That's good. So everyone should check it out. Join into the fun. pvanotes.com. It's a water cooler, I guess.
You know what I try? When I try things and I don't get enthusiastic feedback from you, I get sad. And I tried replicating Connections. Connections is a game I play pretty much every day. I think it's, for someone like me, it's the best game on New York Times. I made connections, but with a twist where you have to pick the left, right, and center of a Venn diagram. So I do a 3x3, 9 choices, and you have to pick 3 that are the left, right, and center. You didn't seem to think it was good. I think.
No, I thought it was good. First of all, I encouraged it because I remembered Moment of Venn, which was a great moment in content marketing. You created great, I mean, it's a so-so ad network, but you created some great content marketing.
Do you remember do you remember that nice oversized magazine I used to create?
Yeah, no, you did some good. I had your little shaving kit for a long time.
Oh, right. Yeah.
You know, I wasn't going to invest in a shaving kit.
Right.
Anyway, everyone should go to pvanotes.com. Another couple quick notes before we get into the meat of the programming. Spencer Pratt has found a new enemy in Scott Galloway. He went after him. Spencer Pratt is looking for a new enemy because he ran for mayor of LA and was squarely focused on Karen Bass for being responsible, according to him, for his house burning down. And so now he's just taking shots wherever, because you gotta have a second. And Scott is
he taking shots, or
through.
did Scott Galloway tell Spencer Pratt to go fuck himself during the mayoral campaign? So there's a bit of history, right? Like, he's been taunting him for a while.
Well, Scott just joined, and I'm talking to like ladies tennis players. I always hate that. He just joined the California Board of Regents for the higher education system in California.
Good for Scott. I mean, it's amazing what a big check will get you, but good for him.
He has done an amazing job with his personal brand. Like, just shocking. I never would have believed this watching those goofy L2 videos. I remember him doing those goofy L2 videos, and I was like, this guy, doesn't he have anyone in his life who takes him aside and is like, you're a rapidly aging, middle-aged bald guy. Nobody wants to see you on video. And
well, he got some plastic surgery this year to help with that a bit.
But like, good on him. I saw him. I listened to his podcast with Ross Douthat last night, and Ross, who we're going to get into a little bit later, is an interesting interviewer, and I like his style.
Who is Ross Douthat?
Ross Douthat. Sorry, he is the New York Times, the conservative. He owns a conservative seat in the New York Times editorial page. I guess Brett Stevens has one, but it's like, basically they need someone like a David Brooks character. That is, he's like a kind of likable Christian conservative, right? With sort of moderate views. He moderates himself. Yeah. They're not going to like invite Nick Fuentes onto the. No. It's just like the op-ed page. It's just.
I don't know.
It has to be somewhat acceptable. Well, no, we'll say they had him on, and this is my one knock against Scott and a lot of, honestly, the VC podcasters.
He drives real smart people nuts, dude. The real smart people cannot stand this guy.
He's a soccer
Dumb people
player
think that
who can only score on set pieces. It's just set piece after set piece after set piece. And Ross was just getting super frustrated, which is his thing. He gets super frustrated with people.
And he's like the Real Housewives of talking heads. That's what he is.
Slices and dice. I highly recommend it. I don't know.
But you know what? I mean, somebody came after Scott and Kara. They're takedown machines. These guys have it coming. They constantly attack everybody. Everybody's an idiot to Kara Swisher, and then Scott just kind of agrees most of it.
Well,
so,
this is
they had it coming.
Creators need a thick skin. And I think, the example of bloggers is a real cautionary tale. My man, Johnny McDermott, just did a profile of AJ Delario, who used to run Deadspin, original Gawker guy. He had like a dark life after that Hulk Hogan tape. He's the guy who made the just monumentally idiotic decision to publish that video. And nobody, by the way, attached to Gawker ever fully came to terms with how much they brought on their own demise. I'm not on the side of Peter Thiel with this, but they made some like major, not just mistakes, but like gross stuff. Like the Condé Nast CFO guy, like just gross. Yeah. Anyway, creators are going to go down the same path, I believe, as bloggers. Perez Hilton just had some really scary mental health episode during a live stream. It's not for everyone. It really isn't. And I think that like when we hear a lot about the mental health challenges of a lot of creators, it's because they didn't really think it through.
I don't know how these sort of debate king champs do it, really. Guys like J.D. Vance or David Sachs, how they love a fight. They love a fight. It doesn't seem to bother them. I don't know. I personally couldn't do it. I don't know how they do it.
Well, the problem when you get into that is like the algorithms and all the incentives are to have conflict and to find an enemy. The New York Times did a piece about the decline of the MAGA right media or MAGA media, and it has lost a lot of its potency, mostly because, after they won, you can't rail against the people in charge when your people are in charge. The tech right, the MAGA media, they've been wrapped up in this $20 burrito debate lately. I don't know if you've seen this, but they're dividing themselves. If Iran wasn't
they're kind of right about it. They're kind of right about it, right?
What are you pro $20 burrito or anti?
No, what I'm saying is, wah, you can't afford a gourmet burrito. Like, make it work, guys. That's the point. But before you leave this Spencer Pratt thing, I actually, in the ring, I think I would bet against him over Galloway. He's more vicious, and Scott's so full of contradictions. He's an easy target, right? So he can complain that a socialist mayor put him on a public database of rich property owners, and he's going to be taxed. He plays the socialist sympathizer and the ravenous or the ravenous rich guy at the same time, and so there's a lot of room for someone to come at him.
Well, I will say this: Ross did. I'm going fully into just first names now. Ross did perfectly get him on that because he said, it sounds to me a lot like you just want to sort of market, conservative type issues, but still keep a progressive card. He's basically, 100%. That's what he's doing with this young man as an interest group thing. And so it was a good interview. Did you see this Netflix executive he's suing Netflix because he got fired after.
His name is Kevin Bale, I think, Brian.
Kevin Bale. He got fired after sharing a little bit too much on an offsite. I think he was set up for failure. They said, bring your full self. And he just talked about using, his ketamine therapy.
Therapeutically.
I didn't even know. I mean, Alex is a third member of this podcast. I didn't even know this stuff was a problem these days. Thank God we don't have HR.
There's something in the story that we don't know, because like a guy drinking a beer upside down and talking about his vulnerability in ketamine therapy, to me doesn't seem like, they told him not to drop the F-bomb so much, right? That he should do it, but not too frequently. It feels these are, I don't know if these are fireable offenses. Something else is going on. And if there's not, he should, extract as much money as he can from Netflix. He should sue them hard.
I mean, I heard some bad stories about sales offsites. I don't know if that still happens, but sales offsites were bad news, I think.
Well, it's kind of like, it's like a kind of jockey frat house. Like what do you expect? What do you want them to do? Play rummy? But a sales offsite, what do you do after the close of the sessions? It's 6:00. You have an hour break, you have dinner, you get a little boozed up, then what? What happens?
Shots. I think. Salespeople love shots. No, I just want to also just take a moment. I want to celebrate salespeople because I think sometimes people might get it the wrong way. I love salespeople. I love people who go out there and sell, because I who is the people who I'm having less time for? Marketers. Because sellers they put their neck on the line. They got a quota. They carry a bag, and they're feral creatures. They're not house cats. They're not sitting by the refrigerator, at least the good ones, waiting for a saucer of milk. They're going out to the lumberyard. And I think these days you need sales energy more than marketing energy. We went through this era where people thought they could just sit behind some dashboard and hit buttons and money would come in. You got to go out there.
Marketers need approval, man. Marketers like to be loved. That's the nature of the job. They want to put it out there and have people feel good. Sales is the opposite. I want to highlight on Field Notes, you sent around a Hacker News article or a list of simple sales rules. I want to highlight a couple if you don't mind.
Please do. And then I want to do can I do my Catalan fishing saying before?
Sure. So number 3, people buy 4 things and 4 things only, ever. Those 4 things are time, money, sex, and approval/peace of mind. If you try selling something other than those 4 things, you will fail. I like the next one. People buy aspirin always. They buy vitamins only occasionally and at unpredictable times. Sell aspirin. There you go.
I like that. So my Catalan fishing saying, I had it on a t-shirt, but it ended up withering. It said, if you want to get the fish, you got to get your ass wet. That's why I like salespeople. They get their ass wet. Marketing people, no.
Did you wear that t-shirt?
I did, yeah. But it was in Catalan. I don't know, Spanish, Catalan. I think Catalan is different enough that it's a language. Don't come at me. I know are they still secessionists?
Well, I like that. I don't think it would fit me, but if it did, I would wear that. I like that t-shirt.
Yeah, I did a great one. AI, let's talk about AI Corner. AI has a new main character. And I want to focus on the characters a little bit here. Alex is a lot about the metal, and you can get into that. But like personally, I'm a narrative guy, and that's where I feel most qualified, honestly, to talk about this AI story, because I think it is very narrative driven. And so
you want to talk
about
rubbers? Is that what you want to talk about?
No. I want to talk about Leopold Aschenbrenner.
Okay, so then we'll use that, and we'll talk about the song of the summer.
Situational awareness, hedge fund that young Leopold popped up a couple years ago. He's like a character out of a Wes Anderson movie. So he's German born. And in Germany, like when you're like, that's the home of the Wunderkind. And so he was a Wunderkind. He was like in the Green Party. He was a firebrand in the Green Party at age 15, railing against automation. And then he moves to America. His parents moved to America, and he goes to Columbia, graduates as a valedictorian at 19. He's linked to effective altruism, that weirdo cult that's driving Anthropic and various other things out in Silicon Valley. He was part of FTX, the FTX Future Fund. So he's at least linked to Sam Bankman-Fried. He's a bit of a poster child for renewal. He's a renewal guy.
He's got it.
It's
all.
Nice.
I mean, and this is before he can like drink. He joins OpenAI super alignment team, gets fired. Okay.
Was that video of him laughing, like this sort of autistic spasm? Was that real?
Unclear. That's the best part about this guy. He wrote a 165-page viral essay that basically was complete AI maxing, but he said, you gotta focus on the energy and the compute as the bottlenecks. That's as simple. And he's a good writer, because you know why? He writes like a guy who knows his secret. And that's a great writing style. He raises $225 million from Silicon Valley elite for this hedge fund, including the Stripe founders. They've plowed tons of money in there. They haven't even gone public, and they have hundreds of millions of dollars that they just spray around all kinds of places. It's a big company, man.
There's all kinds of opportunities for secondary. Anyway, what was the return? There was some crazy return because he leveraged the shit out of it, right? He was doing
Forex leverage. He's all like completely aggressive, exposed them to the dip in the semiconductor and AI stocks, had to sell most of his public equity holdings to Citadel, with it headed by another great character, Ken Griffin, who loves to come in with these whippersnappers and box their ears and shove them in a locker. I love it. He did it on the GameStop thing too. He's great. Okay. Anyway, so his hedge fund is in collapse last week.
No, but isn't there a happy ending? Isn't he still up more than the average bear?
Yeah. He's still up 80%. And Leo lives to fight another day.
Why did he have to dump the portfolio to Ken?
Because if you get margin called, then you got to pony up the capital, and he got margin called. And so, you got to figure out the capital somewhere. At least that's how I think. And all this happens while he's getting married in Carmel, which is a great place for a wedding. My brother
What's better is, didn't he get married at an all-in conferse?
I don't think he got married at the all-in conference. That was a typo on my part. But he held, which is, I don't know, it's a Freudian typo. I have no idea.
Would have made a better story.
I know, but I've typed it on my phone, like on ferries and stuff. And he holds like panels and like symposia, like during his wedding. Like it's just part of the wedding activities, which honestly opens up a new revenue line for me. So anyone out there who is thinking about having maybe some classy programmatic advertising panel, like after they cut the cake, I'm your man.
Well, I think you maybe are pulling the wrong lesson out of it.
I
think what you should be doing is setting up like an ad tech hedge fund.
I don't know if Trade Desk is going to be on that. They're too exposed to the open web. They tried to push the CTV being the no open web, but that dog is not hunting. They're down 80% on the year. Yikes. So anyway, back to Leo. I want to tie him in because I think he's a great character, and I root, like many people, I root for a comeback. Americans love a comeback story. What Americans do not like are prodigies. We like people because we believe that if we work hard enough, we can be one of the elites. Whereas in Europe, they think the elites just were born that way and that they did something sketchy to get there. They cut corners and whatnot. We think we're just one of them, but we just haven't put it all together yet. But we hate prodigies because prodigies are always about, supernova of talent and whatnot. And that means that we can't be.
That just means you won a genetic lottery. You didn't hustle.
Exactly.
That's no good.
That's why like kids gravitate to
Were you
Curry,
a bit of a
LeBron.
prodigy? What kind of kid were you, Brent?
I scored very high in math when my mom says in first grade, I was testing at a 5th grade level in math. And then she follows it up. She leaves like a beat and she says, and then in 5th grade, he was testing at a 5th grade level. So it was a short-lived prodigy period. Because, there's a controversy going on in academia.
But did you, do you mind if I ask you, I don't want to plumb this too deep, but like, did you walk around the house as a little child, like with hot takes on everything like you do now?
No, I don't think so.
Did your mom, would you have takes? Like, would your parents ask you questions that sort of demonstrated that you were wise beyond your years? Would they single you out at the dinner table to have an opinion on something?
We were a family of 7. I wasn't, that didn't happen. When you're the youngest child of I guess what would be considered a large family now, you get a lot of time to sort of like work on your interiority and whatnot.
I mean, I was the youngest
of other things going on.
I know what that's like. I was 6. There were 6 of us. I was the youngest.
Okay, there you go.
But I would just do sort of snide takes. Like that's where I learned my little,
I have
the old punch kiss,
in the worst possible ways. There's this guy, Jason Ardsley. I love academia, fraud, and academic like fights. A full Cambridge University professor at 37, which apparently is quite young to become a full professor. But I'm like, is it? But I'll take it. He also, and so he's become a bit of like a symbol of a lot of this like academic fraud. It looked like he used AI to write his resignation. He apparently claimed to have done 35 marathons in 37 days, which is possible, depending on how slowly. No, but like it is possible to do it. Like, I mean, you'd have to go slow. You'd have to do some walk run. But it's another situation where I feel like
that wasn't the lie that he got caught up in, was it? Wasn't it that there was somebody found that he had cribbed a bunch of other scholars?
Yeah, he allegedly fabricated a lot of his background. He fabricated his research was riddled with errors. He has a new book out. The Atlantic has the original proposal, totally different than the book. I mean, all signs, I don't know for sure, all signs point to him being a fabulist, which, we love fabulous. Remember Jason Blair? Like, these are great stories.
Do you think this happens in academia more often than it happens in the corporate world? Is there fewer checks and balances? Why do we see these stories? Is it easy to lie as an academic?
No, but there's no results as an academic. Like, it's very dubious to show that you are effective at your job, like as an academic, particularly in certain fields. And those are around the social sciences. And I think the social sciences in general right now are getting a maybe proper amount of scrutiny. I mean, they've been pumping out a lot of kids with these dubious degrees that are mired in debt. And meanwhile, you have these people who, on one side, they'll say, hey, they're social justice people, activists and whatnot, who get to have the sort of the upside of the cosseted academic life. I have friends who are professors. The reality is most people in academia are absolutely not, they're not living life on easy mode exactly. They might have some time off during the summer, but like, I don't know, being like in your 50s and making like $65,000 a year is not like,
Well, they don't
I
make
know.
65 anymore. They make a couple hundred. So don't feel too
Okay,
bad.
maybe talk to me about Eastern Kentucky University, but okay, if you're talking about like Columbia and whatnot, we always think about universities and higher education as just like the Ivy Leagues and stuff like this, and it's simply not. Like only 1% go to that. Where do the other 99% go? You know, the reality is to
Eastern
me,
Kentucky
like,
University.
yeah, a lot of people who their first time going to first people in their family to go to college. But I think that on prodigies, this is why people hate 30 under 30. That they love when a 30 under 30, and I do. I admit it because I'm transparent about my dislike of prodigies. I don't trust them.
Well, I think that isn't the 30 under 30 thing is that there's a remarkable amount of them that, are shown to be, flash in the pans or frauds or whatever, that
But I think it's more than that.
That's an ominous list to be on, right?
I don't think, I mean, there's just so many of them that you're going to get some frauds, but it again, it's the incentives. The incentives are to be a wunderkind, to be a supernova. And we just don't like that. We want people to sweat it out. But let's talk about AI and whether real matters.
Well, what you didn't mention is while America may like that hustle story, Brian, they also love a takedown. They like a good takedown here in America. When you're too big for your britches, they'll take you down.
Yeah, but that's nothing compared to like what do they call it? Tall poppy syndrome in like the UK. I mean, I think we have it broadly. We celebrate.
Look how long it took him to
success.
take down Prince Andrew. Took a long time.
Well, that's the royals. That's different.
All right.
Tell me about rubbers.
Rubbers.
You've been focused on this Phoenix Flex.
Well, isn't it a little bit of a kind of case study in the discussion that we're going to have for a long time to come, which is, the provenance of any creative product.
So what this is like the song of the summer?
Song of the summer. It's, it has this kind of, 80s, vibe mixed with hip hop, kind of a little bit British indie, sounds a little bit like the Smiths, but kind of mashed together with American hip hop. And, it's a catchy song, I guess. But if you listen to the verses, they sound like they're machine made. And people, on account of its success, people are obsessed with figuring out what the real story is underneath. The problem is the guy who did it, whose name is Phoenix Flexen, he's like a shitty rapper. People don't believe that there's any kind of artistic integrity to it, except that, they can tap their foot to it. So, but it's part of a bigger story, which is like the music world. All these worlds are being kind of ravaged, like we've witnessed in, kind of media world where, automation and creator communities and, the power of platforms has really just, one by one disrupt sort of every segment of creative production or the, the media world. And it's coming fast for music. And, a lot of people don't really, they want a little music in the background. They're not super fixated on, the artist's story or being part of that tribe. And you know what? AI makes music effortlessly, and some people just don't care. And so I think you're going to get a lot of, kind of AI powered automation in the music industry, and it's going to mess up the economics. And so he's, part of people challenging and questioning and trying to kind of come to terms with that bigger story. And, so everybody's talking about rubbers. In fact, the Channel 5 guy, what's his name?
Andrew Callahan?
Andrew Callahan interviewed him and like had him rapping on the video to kind of prove that he was, legit. So it's a story that people are interested in. They want to know what's going on in music.
Did he hold up his hand to show that he didn't have 6 fingers? Or I guess they solved the 6-finger problem already, right?
Does he have 6 fingers?
No, that was always the tell on AI. AI would always make people with 6 fingers.
Well, I to extend this a little bit, I had an AI experience that I thought was absolutely incredible yesterday, 2 days ago. I had been, do you mind if I tell this little story? I wrote it up, but I was in a cornhole tournament.
You made a friend with a chatbot, right?
Well, I mean, it starts back a little further. I mean, the origin of the story is kind of cute, so we can talk about it. But somehow I was invited to this charity cornhole thing on Shelter Island, and it was super fun. And I saw like more than 2 people that I see once, maybe twice a year, and they were physically transformed. And they were physically transformed on account of, drugs. Ozempic, or one guy TRT. The pool guy was jacked. And last year he was like kind of like a chubby doofusy guy.
Oh, wait, are they taking Wolverine? Do you know Wolverine?
Yeah. Well, that's a peptide, yeah. But that's what is that one? BPC 157 variant or something.
Are people in Shelter Island all on that?
Everybody, man. Biohacking is becoming very commonplace, only going to be more so. And so what's the bigger picture for me is, what's happening to like our identity? They're becoming more fungible, more editable, more like our digital identities, which we can kind of manufacture through how we take pictures and how we present ourselves in the context. And you taking a photo in, Croatia in this beautiful 5-star hotel and saying, look at my life. And so now, everything is becoming editable, including our physical selves. So I was briefly interested in that idea of identity and how it's changing and how digital becomes physical. So I'm in the car driving to New York City, and I open up ChatGPT and I start having a conversation. And there's a new, more fluid, more human-like chat experience on ChatGPT. And it is unbelievably, good. It's really, really it's
back and fluid. Forth. It's back and forth. It's fluid.
You can talk over top of them. There's no pauses. It's kind of instant. What's more is, in this particular conversation, I thought that the insights and level of expertise was like really good. Like it was really good. It was like I had, my friend, the professor in the car, gave me a little background on identity. Who were the philosophers that talk about it? What are the important arguments in the area? How should I be thinking about this? Why taste has become such an important part of like the popular dialogue, because now it's all about the decisions we make, and taste is just like sort of deciding who we are and what we love. And, part of what you talk about all the time, which is like everything is narrative. Why is everything narrative? Is because we make up the worlds we're in, and increasingly we do it physically, on and on and on. So that's how the rubbers thing ties it all together.
And I think that the question ends up being, as this stuff keeps improving, is whether real, in quotes, matters. Like as the quality is improving. And look, I can't stand most AI generated content of any kind. Like I cannot stand AI writing. I despise it. But at the same time, I recognize that it is continuing to improve.
AI conversation, Brian, is better than AI writing. And I don't think that that's a subtle point. And I also think that that's the kind of genesis of this new, much anticipated OpenAI hardware product, which apparently is going to be like a donut and have some kind of moving stuff on it. But it's going to be a voice product. And if you use, if you use this ChatGPT voice thing 5 years ago, literally your head would explode. But like now you use it and you're like, wow, this could be a product. This is insanely useful. Why do I need a screen? There's a role in my life for something that just, provides expertise, companionship, answers to basic questions, and just around. I can see it happening. No.
Yeah. So that's a delivery tool. That is a delivery tool of information intelligence. And I get that. I think I was just like more focused on it as a creation tool, but as a delivery tool, I get this for sure.
Yeah. Hey, listen, you should try it. I think it's probably better than you talking to me on the phone. You'll like it better. It's useful.
Good. I'll road test some ideas with it. I wish I had that as a child in Fort Washington, Pennsylvania. I could have just talked to my AI all day. That would have been great.
You might have done better in your 5th grade math test.
I don't know what I did between like 1st and 5th grade. I just kind of coasted. I got the kudos.
Were you smoking a lot of weed or something? What happened?
I could have been. I don't remember. There was a nun who was locking kids in the closet. I think that threw me off for a little bit. But I saw that and I was just like, whoa, I'm not doing what Joey Ruzzi did.
That's what everybody likes, right? I mean, the Venn diagram is none and nice none, and in between, like, that's virtue, right?
By the way, there was a nun on the plane from Rome to Croatia. You don't see a lot of that in the public. I mean, in full habit, like not in like.
I like a funny nun is a very good positioning. Funny,
it's just more
irreverent nuns.
And maybe this is immature, but like seeing nuns like in full habit doing everyday things is also the same with like Tibetan monks and whatnot. Like I once in a restaurant, I saw a Tibetan monk produce a credit card, which is like not a remarkable thing, but I just never really thought about it.
I think it's weird when it used to be this way in Montreal. It's like this in parts of Williamsburg where all the Orthodox guys walk around and don't interact with other people. And they're like these costumed NPCs that just kind of mill about in the world, but you don't really pay a lot of attention to them.
Yeah. They and the Italians are the last like phone talkers in the world. I love seeing Italians talking on the phone because they love talking
the Orthodox guys talk on flip phones.
Yeah. Yeah. They love that. Like the Orthodox and Italians are still very into the phones. The Italians are always going, ciao, ciao, certo, esatto. Allora. And then that's all. Again, big fan of the Italians. The New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, I think we can call it. I think they've hit escape velocity. There's a power law in publishing, and the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal are on the right side of it. Do you have the statistics? I'm sorry, I was traveling. I don't have the statistics.
While you're looking, I will provide an anecdote. It's like, I remember vividly the New York Times period of self-reflection. What was that report called? You know, when they went around and they interviewed all media companies and they figured out, you know, what they needed to do to change more aggressively.
I'm sorry, it now has 13.3 million subscribers in total.
Okay.
Go on.
So, and I remember the Wall Street Journal sort of spasming, taking
which
on
has
platforms.
5 million.
And we all thought BuzzFeed News was on the rise. There was HuffPo. There was, you know, a bunch of conservative upstarts. And at the time, it was like we're in the middle of what people refer to as the scale era, and that, you know, old media was going to wither. What ended up happening was, you know, the guys with reporting scale and the ability to, you know, use a big brand and sub base to stand up big newsrooms and bureaus crushed it, and they became the sort of source Perrier of reporting and a reference point for all the creators in the world, and now are, I think, far more powerful than they were in the last chapter. They're so important.
Yeah, you know, they had
businesses.
Digital subscription revenue grew 16%. I mean, even ad revenue in digital and just overall advertising. Digital advertising was up 21%. This is New York Times or Wall Street at the New York Times. I mean, they're a monster, and like they're going into local, and like I think they have a shot to be like a national just news clearinghouse because they have the heft.
Meredith, the CEO of New York Times, was coming out of Forbes in that era. I courted her heavily, as did other colleagues of mine, to join Hearst as the CRO, and she was having no part of it. She really, you know, had enough of that sales hustle and saw the New York Times as her path, and, you know, good on her, because that was absolutely the right choice.
Also, kudos to Meredith, who has, you know, she is like a sales leader, CEO archetype, who has become a product. You know, like they didn't win on. We've talked about this before.
I have a whole theory on this.
Archetype.
I have a whole theory. It's about, you know, that illustration of like Cro-Magnon, you know, ape to human.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and you know, sales leaders sit somewhere on that continuum. Many of them are not fully erect.
They're doing shots.
Yeah, they're doing shots. And the real rare ones, people like Meredith, I would argue, people like David Carey, that came out of the sales world but had like real kind of nuanced approaches and could see the gray and were, you know, really understood the media equation and the media product, could kind of evolve into the leadership CEO roles. And I think Meredith has done that incredibly well. Good on Meredith.
Do you know what I remember? I always say this story about her. Like many years ago, I remember inviting her to speak at a Digiday event, and she was still at Forbes. She wasn't like as like prominent, like, and we used to always offer for speakers to come and do a run through, and literally nobody did. All the dudes came and they were so hungover or whatever. She went the day before and did a full run through. Pro's pro. Good job.
Right.
Wall Street Journal is also doing quite well. You know, Emma Tucker she was really what that brand needed. And some of it is in the numbers, are over 5 million and stuff, but some of it is just, you can just tell this is a much more lively product. I'm constantly finding things from the Wall Street Journal that are not just like needed or necessary that I have to, but that are really interesting. And a lot of this is don't overthink it. Like when the New York Times did its innovation report, basically it came out as like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to bet on journalism. We're going to bet on journalism, and we're going to sell that product to an audience. And then we're going to surround it with a bunch of different lifestyle assets. And they executed on it. Same way, you know, at the Wall Street Journal, in that it's just interesting. Like, and they're regularly producing interesting stories. So kudos. Don't overthink it.
I couldn't agree more. If anything brings me back, like, you know, everybody says to the Times, it's the games, but the feed at the Journal appeals to me more. And I took 10 screenshots of it yesterday just to, you know, because I was just like, this is a great feed. And it was like, the next Met Gala is already controversial. A mystery Avenger escalates a war against Scotland's parking police, right? Tennis is having a long, hot, brutal summer. Carlos, where are you? You know, like, I didn't realize I was addicted to my phone until I went to prison. These are British headlines, by the way. These are not American headlines.
Got to bring in a Brit.
You know, like this, how the king of soccer went rogue, nearly lost his FIFA empire and survived. You want to read it. It's good stuff.
I think the big question for both of these in different ways is how they handle this new pivot to video. I'm keeping tabs on this. You know, video. Meredith talked about this in her prepared remarks, that video is the next battleground, that they are not immune to these search declines. And they have to create sticky video that get people ultimately to subscribe. And that's, you know, video is tough for these organizations because, as Dylan and Julia have been harping on at Puck, it is a talent business. And the kinds of talent deals that take place typically in talent business are not the kinds of deals that are done at the New York Times. They're not done at the Wall Street Journal. Again, Kara Swisher, no matter what you think about her personally, she was in the building at the Wall Street Journal, and, you know, they built a great franchise there around her and Walt Mossberg, and they lost both of them, you know, because they didn't cut the talent deal. The Wall Street Journal also lost Joanna Stern. You know, she was basically the successor of Walt Mossberg. She went off on her own. Ross Douthat, who I mentioned earlier, he got poached by 60 Minutes. They're all in the same business now.
Casey Newton and the other dude.
Kevin Roos. They bounced too. So that's going to be difficult for them to deal with. I think, you know,
the brand, the money, the distribution insulates you from stuff like that in that world, I think, and you find the next talent. And you know what? I think that story's been, you know, going on since, you know, we had, you know, scaled media organizations. Maybe it's there's more movement now because of the, you know, promise of the, you know, the creator ecosystem, but, you know, you always lose talent.
True. You know who I think is a rising talent and model is Jasmine Sun. Do you know her? She does great AI reporting.
Field notes for, you know, she's bringing sharp perspective to the AI stuff, and it's nice to see. To be honest, I like her.
But she's got like one foot in the newsletter world with the Substack, but she also writes for The Atlantic. She was just on Ezra Klein's podcast. I think she can do multimedia too. She was really good on that too.
Yeah, that was, you know, the AI populism thing on with Ezra. That was good.
Yeah, because she went out to the Midwest and reported it out. Here's a crazy idea. Like, you can win in a lot of different ways, and I feel like we've overemphasized personality so much when it comes to the quote unquote creator world. And, you know, you can be an expert too, and you can also just win by doing really great reporting. Like, it's possible. I had this guy on the Rebooting show he's an investigative reporter, and he just hung up his own shingle. He's like, I don't agree with these newsrooms, their business models. I don't agree with them. So he's selling coffee subscriptions in order to fund his investigative reporting. I think all kinds of crazy models are going to pop up and people are going to try different things. Most of it won't work. But I think it's actually exciting now, again, because got to be scrappy. Or it's just going to be all Nepo babies. Lifestyle media is going to be all Nepo babies. Let's be real.
Well, in a related point, you saw this thing that someone submitted on Field Notes, which was how journalism and media people are concentrated in New York and Washington. And, secondary cities in the country have become kind of journalistic, deserts. I thought that was an interesting story where, it's sort of connected to your, the escape velocity point on Wall Street Journal, New York Times. Those are people that are employed in New York City.
Yeah, but this is like local news. Local news is the sickest patient in the hospice. That's just, that's
yeah, national journalism absorbed the remainder of the industry. Well, journalism industry shrank across the country, but remaining employment became more concentrated. Manhattan reportedly has 10 times its population share of newspaper employment. Washington remains disproportionately important. Philly, Chicago, and other major cities have lost much of their journalist workforce. What is that? That's, I think, that changes things, doesn't it? How do you see that?
I mean, it changes things. It's unfortunate. I mean, but it's the centralization because you need the wealth and the scale of Washington or New York to make these markets work. I mean, I'm more disturbed by how there's like 10 PR people to every journalist. Like that's a more alarming fact to me.
You get very upset about that. Like when they say, we've talked about this on the pod before, but you sent one around this week, which was one of the AI pitches that you received to get some guest on your show.
Yeah, that was.
It drives you nuts.
I mean, it used to. I used to like complain on Twitter about like PR people, and then they would like swarm me and invite me onto PR podcasts or like to do PR. And I was like, oh my God, this is worse. I just think that, look, as this world fractures, there's a lot of people filling the void in news and basically using it as a front to, massage public opinion. Both Democrats and Republicans are setting up quote unquote fake news, local news websites. There's this company, Courier Newsroom. I mean, I like Tara McGowan who runs it, but I'm like, okay, like you're setting up all of these kind of quote unquote newsrooms that are like basically front operations for a political influence operation. And, look, there are a lot of downsides to this fractured media ecosystem. And that is definitely one of them. It is open season for the astroturfing. And look, the VCs saw this very early. They flooded into media because they saw that it was incredibly valuable and the monetization mechanisms were just broken. And so that there was an opening to muscle in there because they had a better model. Fluffing your portfolio is a better model than like hawking display ads. No offense to display ad industry.
Well, and yeah, so media needs all that type of media needs a new business model, and it as an extension of something else.
Your point about content marketing to me was very important.
Yeah, it's all content marketing. Everything is content marketing. You are a walking, talking content marketing machine.
Is this where I can talk about my TRB Audience Summit?
Well, we can at the end when we label it as branded content, but
no, that's
in
old
advance
school.
of that. I would also make the point, and I think this is a bit of a non sequitur, but I think people misunderstand YouTube consumption and at their peril, actually. And there's an intentionality to YouTube, even when I watch it on the television, which I often do, which makes it really different than the mode I'm in when I watch a streamer. So when I see sort of Disney or Netflix or others saying, we want a little of that action, bring creators and, bring hot ones to Netflix or, bring TikTok to Disney. I think it kind of misunderstands the sort of YouTube impetus from a viewer perspective, which is like, it's an enthusiast channel, and there's a kind of real intentionality to, how you use it. It requires a density and scale of creators to make it work at the level of granularity required to serve the enthusiast. And it also requires, obviously platform chops, particularly in the algorithm, to make it work and deliver you the kind of content that makes the experience satisfying. And I think as a result, it's kind of untouchable. But, to say, give me a little of that, enthusiast action when you're really a streaming platform that serves a very kind of sit back kind of leisure mode, I think won't work.
Yeah. I mean, I remember back in the day, like trying to out Google was like the worst possible thing you could do. And people tried to, do alternative search engines. It's like, no, it's just, and I think YouTube is the same way. Trying to out YouTube, forget it. It's like over. Peacock surrendered. They waved the white flag. They're going into the YouTube premium bundle. And that's the fate for a lot, I think, of media. They're not going to be able to pull off DTC
you can
strategies.
move from YouTube to that other mode, I think, but you can't move from that other mode into YouTube. I agree.
Well, I wanted to get your take on Disney selling its A&E stake to Hearst for about $1 billion. And you know a little bit about.
I know a little bit
Hearst and its investments.
Here's what I thought. Hearst's a great company, great people, and every company needs to move from one hit to the next. And, obviously Hearst is a bit at scale, a bit of a poster child for that, seeing that there was pressure on media, first in the newspaper business, then in the magazine business, in the local TV business, and now in cable. And, making smart investments in health tech and data businesses, in automotive data businesses, in financial data businesses like the Fitch ratings, all really, really shrewd investments that played out over, a 15, 20-year horizon. But, we always marveled at both ESPN and A&E because they weren't operating positions that Hearst owned. In the case of A&E, they owned half of it, Disney owned the other half, and Disney really had the operational responsibility. In the case of ESPN, Hearst owned 20%, Disney owned the rest, but they were like really lucrative. So each of them in their heyday produced about $1 billion of cash back. So that's $2 billion collectively back to Hearst.
So wait. A&E, A&E used to be called Arts and Entertainment. Arts and Entertainment used to be.
Yeah.
Like I remember early cable.
I mean, Hearst played a role in its creation, but the interesting point is a financial one. And it's that a stream of income of $1 billion a year, or in the case of the whole asset, $2 billion a year is worth, depending on how it's growing, call it $20 billion, maybe more, $30 billion. And just as a reflection to where, the cable industry has, a hard fall from grace is they bought Disney's half of that for $1.2 billion. So my back of the napkin on that would be that half probably produces $200 to $300 million in EBITDA still. That the payback on it is probably 4 or 5 years, maybe a little longer, 5 years, 4 years. And Paul Buccieri, who's the leader of that, is very familiar to Hearst, and I think we'll kind of evolve it to be a set of brands and a production company and something that harvests the rest of the revenue out of cable. And, Hearst will own the whole thing and it'll do really well with it. But, if you think about it, so it's a couple $1 billion asset. It was probably worth 30 or 40 billion before, tough times in cable. But I think that Hearst will, land it as well as possibly, as good as it possibly could be. Yeah.
Okay. But so an asset like that, what's its next life stage? It's moving down the private equity.
Well, no, I mean, I think, history's a nice brand and A&E, I think, is a little tougher. And there's a couple other brands in there, cable brands. I think that you become more of a production business and you produce all kinds of, ranging from sort of evergreen video content, documentaries, biography. They also own biography. and you become a content supplier to the new generation of platforms, as well as, trying to, find a future in a direct-to-consumer world, either through your own platform or through, more likely, other people's platforms as, cable deteriorates. And you probably have, the next 10 years to fully, wring the money out of cable.
Do you think we'll see more of these kind of deals?
Well, I mean, that's the same thing as Versant, right? They're going to more aggressively shift that company as a public entity, and they'll try to buy stuff like that rounds out their revenue, like they did in the golf space. And yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's always a way. There's a will, there's a way.
I know. I love capitalism for that. I was reminded of that Bending Spoons bought Airtable at a deep discount. I guess the deal basically valued them at like $2.3 billion. Airtable, for those who do not know, I still pay Airtable. I don't think I should. I need to cancel it. It's a database product. It's another one of these SaaS companies. This is the ongoing saga of the SaaS apocalypse has not ended. Not with Airtable going at this, which, look, multi-billion-dollar company, amazing job. It's a bearish sign for that entire sector, though, because they're not being valued very highly. It's the way it goes.
I cannot tell you how much I enjoy a ripe summertime heirloom tomato with a little salt and pepper on it, and maybe a dash of olive oil. I just think there's nothing better, really, but that's not my choice. A shout out, I guess.
I have to do this. See, I don't do that thing. Like, I need to just come up, go on. I got to come up with my story. No, it's not that.
Yeah. Well, there's these two guys, I don't know them, Josh Clark, Charles Bryant. They have a podcast. I think it's popular. It's called Stuff You Should Know. I listened to it on rare occasion, although this week they did an episode on reggae, which I'm a big fan of. When you grew up with British radio and, punk rock.
You're a big fan of reggae?
A huge fan, massive fan.
Really?
I even made a pilgrimage to Kingston to go see the original studios. And, I read the books, and I love Lee Perry. I love dub. And I would say it's among my favorite types of music. And I know that's maybe a bit incongruous, so you can wrestle with that this week. But anyway, they did a show, reggae really kind of came about, from, ska to rocksteady to reggae, and then variations of reggae and dub and stuff after that. But it was in the late 60s, and it was really became popular music with Bob Marley in the 70s after the hippie thing kind of died down and there was room for another idea. Now, it's obviously a global phenomenon. The source of all of it is largely Kingston, Jamaica. And it's a great musical history. So they did an episode on that. These guys are, they're just a couple of guys, and, they do their homework and they make a nice podcast. So I call that a good product this week.
All right, good. So my good product, it has to come from my travels, right? So one of the things that,
well, you always get mad at me for like doing fruit and food and stuff. So I hope this isn't like a fucking coffee beverage or something.
No. One of the things I like about, you get experience to different cuisine. When you go to when I spend time in Sicily, you start to realize the direct descendant that Italian-American cooking is from Sicilian cuisine. But there are some real differences. Like, one is all the garlic in Italian-American cooking does not exist. Like, they barely use garlic. And if they do use garlic, they remove it. They don't chop it up and leave it in there. So that's an American invention. The other is there's just way more vegetables in a starring role in Sicilian cuisine than there is in like Italian-American cooking. And just an overall less intensity. There's none of the boom of
so what emerald. Give me like, let me drool.
So you get like an eggplant parmesan, and like it is very light. The thing that I notice is like actual like Sicilian cooking is like very light compared to like the Italian-American cuisine of America.
Yeah.
And they also, one of the things I like about Italy is like each region has their own like pasta. Like bussiate is like the big pasta around Trapani, and you get bussiate everywhere. And I like that. I like the idea of regional identity, but that's not my good product, Troy.
I love it. What do you got?
In fact, it is a coffee drink. It is a coffee drink.
Yeah, what do you got?
I do not like iced coffee. I think it is a crime against nature. I just don't think coffee is made to be on ice. It's just dumb. I'll drink a hot coffee in Miami in August, with one exception, and that is the Shakerato. And the Shakerato is an Italian. They basically take espresso, put it in a tumbler with ice, shake it up like the Tom Cruise in Cocktail, okay? Pour it into, I like it in a highball personally, but sometimes they'll serve it up. And it is a lovely drink. A lot of times they'll try to put Zucchero in there. I'm not really big into the sugar, but a little simple syrup, that can be pretty nice in the afternoon.
I think I would
it
spice
produces
that.
a foam.
I would spice. It sounds great. I would put a little vodka in there. At lunchtime, I think day drinking is also a good product. Night drinking is completely overrated because that's how you feel bad in the morning. But drink in the daytime, that's it.
Yeah, the guy did try to upsell me. He did try to get me into the Amaro in my Shakerato.
Yeah, a little Amaro in there would be nice.
But I declined it. But the foam, that's the key is the foam. It has a nice
Are you
foam.
are you relaxing? Are you still farting out newsletters and stuff? What are you doing?
Yeah, farting out. There's exactly what I'm doing. I'm planning an event, the TRB Audience Summit on September 17th. And that has required a lot of planning, a lot of programming. Nick Thompson is coming. We're going to do a little talk with Nick Thompson.
Listen, I want to say that just so people appreciate this, and I really would like to see people get behind this event. So Brian, this connects to the whole dialogue we always have about sustainable media business models. And Brian, broke off from, the Borg, created Rebooting, largely newsletter driven with aspirations to make it a subscription product, kind of became branded content man, does all kinds of... And
I have partnerships with aligned partners.
Yeah. And now, like any good vertical content branded content guy, and now he's creating his signature event, which will be really important to the value of this company you've worked so hard at. And that is called the TRB Audience Summit?
Yes, September 17th.
Very important event. Buy your tickets.
Thank you, Troy. This is good.
Buy tickets. It's going to be great. He's got really good C-suite level people, and I might even go.
Awesome.
If I get a free ticket. If I get a free ticket, I'm not fucking paying for the ticket, Brian.
Okay, we'll talk about that. All right, let's leave it there.
That's it for this episode of People vs. Algorithms, where each week we uncover patterns shaping media, culture, and technology. Big thanks, as always, to our producer, Vanya Arsenov. She always makes us a little clearer and more understandable, and we appreciate her very, very much. If you're enjoying these conversations, we'd love for you to leave us a review. It helps us get the word out and keeps our community growing. Remember, you can find People vs. Algorithms on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and now on YouTube. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week.